Okay, today my check engine light is coming on for my 2012 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. I had the check engine light checked and it's throwing out the P0128 code. Now that's a code for the coolant sensor or the thermostat. Some suggested that you replace the coolant sensor first because it is a cheaper part. I did attempt to do that and I attempted to get it on video, but as you're about to see, that video went awry. Oh, I probably could have salvaged that video, but I rushed so quickly to get it back together that I didn't get a chance to film the actual ending of putting it back together. So that's why I don't have a video on that. But anyway, the sensor did not end up taking care of the check engine light, so I'm gonna have to replace the thermostat. I chose to go with Mopar parts on this. Obviously you can go with your local aftermarket parts from your parts store. And then we're going with the G05 formula coolant. All the part numbers and everything will be in the description, so be sure to check that out. All right, so first things first, we're gonna go ahead and pop off this cover. And that cover just snaps onto these little clips here, so that's all you gotta do is just pop them off those. All right, so the next thing we got to do here is remove this tube from the air intake. We've got a clamp here, and then we've got a clamp here, and we've got two bolts here that we're going to have to remove. As you can see, the clamps are just held on by this screw, basically, that you can use a flathead screwdriver or a socket. That's the one on the throttle body, and here's the one that's on the air filter box. All right, it looks like these are going to be a 10mm socket for these two. As always, be sure to check out the description for a list of the tools that I'm using. Then we'll want to go ahead and get this little hose out of these clips here. All right, now we'll get this screw off this clamp. Now we've got the screw here on the airbox. Okay, as we were pulling up that hose, we've got a sensor here that we need to disconnect, so you don't want to just yank it up. All right, so to get this guy off, these are such a pain sometimes. There's a little tab right here on the back. You just want to push that tab down and pull, and it releases the plug. All right, so now we've got the hose off and the sensor out of the way, and directly underneath the throttle body here is our thermostat. This guy right here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove those two bolts. It looks like it can be removed with a socket or a star wrench of some sort. And that's all it's gonna take to get that off. But the trick is making sure that we don't get antifreeze everywhere. So what I'm going to do, put a pan down at the bottom here underneath this section of the engine to try to capture any antifreeze that's going to drip down, because what's going to ultimately happen is we're going to have antifreeze coming out of this hose over here, and then we're going to end up having antifreeze leaking from where the thermostat is. So I want to make sure that I catch all this, and I'm also going to be trying to use a measuring cup to catch some of that as we pull this off. Okay, so here we go with the tricky part, guys. And by the way, be sure that your vehicle is cold. You do not want to do this when your vehicle is warm, because you will have coolant spray all over you and it'll be hot. So be sure to do this when the engine's cold. All right, so here we go. Okay. All right, we've got the clamp slid back. Now we're going to go ahead and try to work this hose off and get hopefully the antifreeze in this cup here. I'm using just a measuring cup. Get the hose out of the way. And that worked out okay, guys. We were able to capture some of that coolant so that we don't get it all over the floor. So now we're ready to go ahead and take out the thermostat. We're going to lose a little bit of coolant here as well, but let's go ahead, get this repositioned here. Maybe we'll catch some more, maybe we won't. All right, so just like our air intake, we've got a 10 millimeter bolt here that we're going to remove. Then we've got another one down here underneath. Grab our measuring cup to try to catch some of this coolant, and we'll pull this off. As you can see, there's quite a bit of coolant in there. Okay guys, so quite a bit of coolant. Just going to take a rag and wipe out the rest of it. All right, so it looks like our rubber gasket is no longer on the thermostat here, so we're going to have to remove it from the engine. And here it is. It was still attached there. All right, I'm just going to take a razor blade here and just make sure our edge is clean. I'm not going to like gouge it. I'm not going to gouge. I'm just going to make sure there's no residue from that gasket. I don't think there is. It looks pretty clean. I'm going to wipe the surface down really well. Make sure we got it clean of debris after we use the razor blade. So now we got our new thermostat and our new gasket. And then we're going to go ahead and be installing this with the breather valve up just like it was before. All right, now we don't want to over tighten because the thermostat is plastic, but we definitely want to get it snug. Okay, so now we got our hose. And it's still got some coolant in there. I'm gonna try to get it on quick. We're gonna run it right up to that stopper, just like it was before. There's a little stopper here on the thermostat, and we're just gonna run the hose right back up to that, and then we're gonna move our clamp that's now back here, we're gonna move it right back to where it was. Okay, so our clamp's right back to where it was. We're snugged up against the stopper. All right, so now we're gonna put our air intake hose back in. And do not forget to plug your sensor back in, guys. That would be bad. So make sure to get your sensor first. Get our hose back in the clamps. All right, at this point, guys, we're going to go ahead and top off the coolant. All right, to complete the final step here of refilling the radiator with coolant, I'm going to be using this spill-free funnel. And there's a lot of different ways, I guess, that you can do this. I chose just to go ahead and spend the money and get this funnel because it seems to be the easiest way. There are some ways that you could do it with just a regular funnel, but we're gonna go ahead and do this. You can pick this funnel up for about 44 bucks at Advanced Auto. That's where I got it. I would highly suggest looking for it online because I think you could probably find it a lot cheaper or even alternatives that work the same. So essentially how this thing works is that it's got an adapter that's going to attach to our radiator, and then the funnel is going to fit onto that adapter. We're going to fill coolant into the funnel, not too much, just a little bit, so that when the thermostat kicks on, it sucks the coolant down into the engine, is ideally what's supposed to happen. Now, if it doesn't do that and it ends up bubbling up, then the funnel will catch the excess coolant, will come back in, plug it, and then remove the excess coolant that we don't need without causing spill. Theoretically, that's how it's supposed to work, so let's check it out. All right, so we're going to be refilling the radiator here with this, sorry, not sure how to pronounce it, but Zerex G0 formula made for Chryslers, Ford, Mercedes. And we're going to be using the 50/50 already pre-diluted mixture, so we don't have to mess around with mixing. Now, I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not you should use this coolant or mix it with the factory coolant from Mopar. But based on everything I read, it said it was okay to mix with it. On the back it says it's manufacturer approved, and it's obviously what the guys at the parts store recommended. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to try to pick any up at my Mopar dealer. So this is what we're gonna go with. Be sure to do your own research to figure out if this is what you wanna use or not, but we're gonna go ahead and do it. All right, so we've added our fluid, and as you can see, the spill-free funnel looks to be working pretty good. And I've filled it up to about right there. Pretty much right at this point here. So now what we're gonna do is start the engine and get the vehicle up to running temperature. Should take anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. Once that happens, the thermostat will open up and it should suck out some of this coolant. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. As you can see, it looks like the coolant's getting a little warmer. It's starting to mix with the Mopar coolant, and it's changing color. And if I squeeze on this hose, you can see there's no more bubbles, but it looks like the system is pressurizing. It's not quite up to the temperature it needs to be yet, so we're gonna let it run a little longer. All right, guys, I ended up having to put the Jeep at a little bit of an incline, and now it's really working better. As you can see, it was bubbling there, it's burping. So as you can see, I just kind of backed it out of my garage, and my driveway kind of slopes downhill. So it's got the Jeep at somewhat of an incline, and that seems to be working much better as far as burping the system. A couple of things to note when bleeding the system. Number one, make sure that the vehicle is at idle. You don't want to be revving the engine while you're doing this because it could cause the coolant to prematurely heat up and shoot out of the radiator. Number two, do not run the engine for too long because it could cause the coolant to heat up and shoot out of the radiator. In theory, it should only take 10 to 20 minutes to bleed the system. If after 10 to 20 minutes you still feel like you did not complete bleeding the system, go ahead and let the engine cool down and then just repeat the process. Now, once the engine's cooled down, we can safely check the coolant level in the radiator. At this point, we should be able to top off the coolant in the radiator by simply pouring the needed coolant into the top of the radiator. And that's it, guys. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can stay tuned to our upcoming camping and RV series that we're going to be doing this summer. Be sure to check out all the info in the description. And if this video was helpful for you, please hit that like button. And thank you so much for watching. Peace!